Okay, now we're going to get started with Dr. Terrilynn Fox.
Okay, Nistogok Abik Mataki. I just want to say how amazing it is to see all of you here. It's been a couple years in the making for this 2-day conference to occur, and I'm so honored and humbled to see all of you here. I want to acknowledge our elders. Thank you for taking the time to join us, to teach us, to share with us all that you can. I want to thank Charlie for the prayer, the smudge. It we begin every day with a prayer and a smudge, and it starts off our connection to who we are in a good way. I want to thank wellness program staff who work endlessly, tirelessly, and they enjoy the work that they're doing. Thank you. I want to thank Blood Tribe Department of Health board members, Jerry and Rodney and Charlie, who are here. As well, our Chief Executive Officer, Derek Fox, thank you for being here. Want to thank my dad, Tony Fox, for being here. Want to thank the technicians and Brent for recording and taking the time out. So if you see all of the people that are involved, it takes a lot of collaboration. It takes time, it takes patience, and that is what our ceremonies teach us, patience. Don't rush things, work together, be kind, and good things will come from that. And I see that in almost everything that we do at our wellness program. My parents are Tony and Teresa Fox, Odekimaki and Ikitsikam. My grandparents are Buna and Mukakin and Biaki and Satsi. And I have extended kin, into Montana, Bigani and Siksika. So I come from a large family, and I'm probably related to so many of you. This morning's gathering is a critical issue in today's society, to say the least. And I'm just speaking from my mind. I should know how to introduce and engage people after 20 years of doing this. And I want to share that if you have questions or a comment that is so burning and you want to ask it, please just raise your hand. I'm a dynamic dialogue person. I want to engage people. I don't want to just speak to you. I want to speak with you and hear what you have to say, because in ceremony, in teepees, that's how it is. We have that exchange of knowledge and energy, that reciprocity that is so important to connect to our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. So for me, that's important. As Tony and Terrilynn have mentioned, our gathering this morning is honoring our ancestors, practicing our Siksikaitsitapi traditions through innovation and vision. And for me, if I don't ground myself in those ancient ways, I may lose track. And when I start talking about our ancient ways and our prayers, and you smell the smudge, it calms you. I feel confident and connected. And for me, that's very important. My grandparents, I'll say this again, I don't know if I ever heard a Blackfoot word, English word from Mukakin and Buna. And so either I could understand it or I didn't. And that has helped me throughout my lifetime. When elders talk, I may not know all the words, but I can get the context. And that's important to me, because bringing our culture back in everything that we do, once we start understanding the wording and the connection we have embedded in our language systems, that'll strengthen our identity. And that's one of the purposes of this gathering. So for me, I am immersed in that. I grew up with it. That's what I know through my grandparents, through the akokas, and through the everyday rituals that we practice, the smudge, the prayer, the meditation, and growing up with Catholic parents, saying the rosary, the serenity prayer, all of those things that lift your spirit, that connect you to Creator, to a higher power. Those are all important elements of who we are. And so introducing myself as such helps ground me, helps connect with all of you, my kin, my relations, who I am, so that I'm not just up here saying this, I'm Terrilynn Fox, I'm Dr. Terrilynn Fox, which I am, but that's not who I am. That's who I am within our Siksikaitsitapi context, and that's so important for me to share with people. So moving forward, just want to talk about what this project is, why we're here, why it's important, why we spend endless hours writing and trying to get more monies that'll help fund gatherings such as this. And I'll just quickly mention, if you can't see this screen clear at the back, feel free to move where you can see the screen, because it's important that you're all engaged. So what did this project, where did it come from? It came from the Department of Gender and Equality. And that branch, it has this feminist response and recovery portion. This funding comes directly from that department. Why? Because there's been gender inequality. There's been gender discrimination. How does it happen? I'll talk about it in my presentation. But this specific element of why we far reach external funding to have gatherings such as this is to create awareness, to educate, to connect, to understand, to have this foundation of where we've come from, how we've come to be the way we are, and what we can do about it. Those are elements that are integral. We have to understand, we have to have a dialogue, and then we can move forward together. Not the way I see things a certain way, but I want to share what I know. And you're going to help me, help you, help our community, right? That's how we're going to do it together. So within this project, we want to talk about systemic change. We're going to achieve this by delivering learning sessions on pre-colonial gender norms and values. So that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to talk about our Blackfoot culture and how we're going to enmesh all of that, what we know, ancient ways, and how we're going to bring it forward with elders, with those that have specific knowledge. I have specific knowledge, and it's my responsibility to share that. It's no good if I just know it. What happens with knowledge is that I want everyone to know it. Everyone should know what everyone else knows. And that's how it was before. That's how we were in teepees, in gatherings, in sharing stories, in talking about legends, and having humorous conversations. We learned from each other. Providing a safe space. This is a safe space to talk about it. And when I present and I talk about issues, it's raw and it's real. And I'm not going to dummy down. I'm not going to beat around the bush, because this is from my heart. This is extending outward in a very real way. I'm not teaching a course at Mount Royal University at this moment. I am here in front of all of you, and I want you to get what I get and feel what I feel and know what I know. That's my relational responsibility as Dr. Fox. We're going to have this 2-day gathering. We're going to have other information community sessions where we talk about it, where we talk about gender inequality, where we say, why? Why is it happening? What can I do? Is this happening to me? Where can I go for support and resources? Well, that's all a part of what we're doing here today. And at the end, we're going to host another 2-day closing ceremony. So this funding is up until March 31st, 2024. So we got some movement to do. And I need you on board. I need you on board with us, so that when you learn, you're going to share that with your friends and your family. And it's that ripple effect of knowledge exchange. And that's important for us and for me. So at the end of the project, the organization will have contributed. So the health department, the board, whether they know it or not, you're supporting this. You're saying this is a good thing. You're attending it. And I'm just, I welcome ideas from anyone. Share with your support system. Drop a note at Wellness Program. Say, this is what else I think we might need. What do you think? And let's move forward together. We're going to talk about the harmful gender norms and values that have been imposed upon us. We didn't ask for it. It's been imposed upon us. And now, through education, then you will be empowered to make choices that are good for you, that are good for your family, ultimately good for the community. We want our blood tribe community to prosper in a good way. Through this community engagement, it's going to be far-reaching. We're going to involve our leaders, men, women, girls, boys, our LGBTQ community, in understanding gender inequality so that there's gender equality, so that we can reach that. And then we can see it. We can see it for our children, for ourselves, for future generations. We're responsible for 7 generations that'll come after us. And we have to help heal 7 generations that have come before us. That's our responsibility. Some of the activities that we will be hosting is this 2-day event, on the land learning sessions to increase understanding of harmful gender norms. And we will include our elders at everything that we do. Your knowledge, your prayers, your teachings, your experience. That's the foundation of how we're going to move forward. Community training sessions, and then we'll host another closing gathering, and we'll have someone provide a summary of this whole project, a witness to say, this is what I saw, this is what I wrote, and tell me if I got this accurate. And that's important, because we're a part of this history that we can then share with our children and grandchildren. So it's like when the elders and our older population, when they tell stories of their younger days, that's a snapshot of that history. So this is a snapshot. This project is a snapshot of how we're moving forward together in creating awareness and breaking down those harmful barriers. Culture is our immune system. So if you think as your physical body, what does your immune system look like? You need to feed it good food. You need to know you're connected through prayer, through ceremony, through the smell of smudge. Even that is just this trigger of feeling good, the trigger of knowing you were once in a teepee and you heard the elders and the grandparents talk and you feel safe. What does that do for you? It does a lot for me in particular. When we are grounded and enmeshed into our culture, miracles happen. Change can happen. Our identity as Siksikaitsitapi is strengthened. Our connections become stronger. Our ways of knowing, being, and doing are clear and distinct. Our families are healthy. Our language is our pathway to our connection to the past, present, and our future. Our ancient ways are foundational to our present decisions and our way forward. So this is what this project is about. And I'm going to share that story again of how it came to be. So a couple years ago, I'll be specific, December 10th, I got to work and there was just a little bit of a meltdown the day before, and it froze overnight. And I got to work just after 8. Nobody was at work yet. There was no one in the parking lot. So no one witnessed this, but I did, and I'm going to share that story. I opened the door, and I was just my one foot, and I had my purse in one hand, my bag in the other, my lunch bag. And what happened? I slipped. I just lost footing. Boom, banged my head on my truck, my back, my butt on the ice. My purse went this way, my lunch went this way. I saw my fruit go under the truck. And I don't know how long I was out, maybe a few seconds. And I kind of looked up, and my first thought was, did I just effing fall? Really? Did I just effing fall? That was my first thought. Because it doesn't happen to me, right? And no one was there. I was looking around. No one was there to see that. And lo and behold, EMS came over. I called Derek. He called the EMS. They came to check me. It was just a few minutes after the fall, so no symptoms. But gradually, every day from that incident, from that fall, I developed a horrible concussion. I was actually home for 3 months, working from home, trying to recover. And this is where this project came from. I was home writing a lot, and I knew we had to get this application in. Our other funded project was ending. This was a new funding initiative. So lo and behold, you're all here because I had that concussion. But in reality, that time was very healing for me as well. We had just lost our esteemed colleague, Jackie Red Crow, just a few days after I slipped and fell. But in that time, I had a chance to heal and grieve the loss. I think it was my mom's 3rd anniversary coming up of her passing away. So I had a chance to heal and reflect. And in my writing, what is this doing for me? I'm getting to write about things. I can heal and I can feel good. And it was submitted mid-March. By June, July, they had announced the recipients. And south of Calgary, we're one of 3 recipients to receive this funding. And I think there was well over 1,000 applications. And so, I don't know if it was the concussion or just my, grit and persistence to get these projects to get funded. But that's what this project is all about. And I want to thank all of you for being here and sharing this with us. A lot of what I do, I'm an academic, and I taught sociology for 12 years, and I still teach it in my everyday practice at work and with my family and friends. I see it from that perspective. But sociology is like our Indigenous Blackfoot lens. I got to know and reconnect with our culture when I started studying sociology. So I'm very blessed to have that as my background. So the historical context of violence against women and girls. What I'm going to do is walk you through a little bit of the history so you get it, so you understand where we're at today. And whether you've heard these words before or not, they're new. Whether you understand them differently, you apply them differently today, that's good. Just open your hearts and minds. Some of it is blasé, just humor me, just let me do what I gotta do. Ask questions though, write down, if you have a pen and paper, ask a question at the end and we can talk about it. When we have the break, Dolly's going to then talk about how the importance of our elders and their how we're infusing what we're doing with elder knowledge, elder teachings, immersing in our Blackfoot ways. So, the history of Siksikaitsitapi, their origins, and the sacred knowledge and science are the fabric from which our identity is woven. The breach from these sacred ways was originated with colonialism. And we've all heard that word before. We know that. What do we do about it? That's the key here. What are we going to do? So I hope you gain some tools so that you can make those choices to say, what am I going to do now? Now that I know this, it'll empower your decisions as you move forward. And we've all had an attachment to the land. When you take a drive to the mountains, it connects you to the land. You have this sense of, I'm home. And Siksikaitsitapi territory is vast. So whether we're driving from Calgary or Medicine Hat or coming back from BC or down south somewhere, our territory is far-reaching. And we have that affinity, a connection to it. That's who we are as well. We're not separate from it. So when colonialists or settlers came this way and they disrupted our way of life, our spirit wasn't quite keen with that. It was saying, what's going on here? This is a disruption. You're interrupting my naturalness, my connection to the land, to who I am. And so that's part of the teaching. This is what happened. It was intentional. It was aggressive. And at times, it was violent. So that we have to be able to use these words and feel it and talk about it. Otherwise, we may not heal fully, right? Contact, was it 500 years ago or way before that? Actually, there's documents and records that say no one discovered a land. You can't discover a land. You can discover a mineral in the land. You can discover a diamond or gold, but a land is a land. So we have to clarify these words. We have to say, no one discovered us. We're already here. You just happened to meet us here. You happen to see us here, right? So we have to be able to get rid of that notion of somebody discovered, Indians. We were already here. We're just different people in a different land, a different way of life, a different language. Hello? I'm back. So again, just talking about that connection and that contact. But there was people that were curious and discovering, if I sail on this big ship, where am I going to go? So that threw out the notion of the earth was flat, right? So now these individuals who do mapping and the geography, we know that the earth wasn't flat. Once the sailors came around and they said, no, I actually didn't fall off the face of the earth. We had many policies prior to Canadian and settler teachings and writings that were imposed on us. So we had the teaching, the tree of great peace, the Iroquois, down east. We had legend stories of origin and Napi teachings, our teachings, right? I used to hear my grandpa Mukakin come into my classroom when I was in elementary, and him and Harry Shade would come in and they would share these stories with us. On occasion, my grandpa would fall asleep, but that was okay. The stories would continue. He had already shared his story, and then Harry would start talking. But these stories connect us to the past, and we must remember we were a strong people already before Treaty 7 was signed. We were already a strong people. We're a strong people before the Royal Canadian Mounted Police started roaming around and trying to assimilate and make us conform to their laws. We already had our laws. These are our laws, origin stories, our ceremonies. We already had our ways of knowing and being. Gainaitsini. We already had those. So again, if you get what I'm talking about, there is Western writings and teachings, and there's our teachings and our way of life. And that's what we want everyone to connect back to, is our way of life. We can know this knowledge, we can respect it, what it did for us. But now we know there's many misconceptions, misunderstandings, and outright wrongful fiction written about us, right? We're not savages. We don't, walk around in, colored feathers. We don't go, we don't do that. So what did we do? That's part of our responsibility, to teach that with each and every one of you, of our young people, with our elders, with our knowledge keepers. So we had many ways of knowing, being, and doing within our own traditional context. And again, our connection to our land, even the Supreme Court of Canada has already said, Aboriginal people, Indigenous people, Siksikaitsitapi people, you're caretakers of the land that you walk upon. You already had that. But Canadian legal system, Canadian law, is still trying to dictate that for us. So the more we know, the more we share our knowledge, the more history from our elders, the more many of you may go back to school. And as Charlie said, we might have too many lawyers, but we might not, right? We need change agents. We need people that can say, I'm so grounded in my culture that I will go to bat and I will create change, and there's nothing I have to lose and everything that I have to gain to make those changes happen. So the fact is that when European settlers came, the Indians were already there, organized in societies and occupying the land as their forefathers had done for centuries. This is what Aboriginal title means. So we don't have to prove anything that this is not our land, but our connection to our land. That's a part of us. That's integral. And we need to, we want to empower and help people know that. The water, the air, the connection to the animals in that habitat, in that ecosystem, right? the soil, right? We ought to all know those stories that help us take care of everything around us. As humans, we have that responsibility to take care of all of that. If humans die off 500 years from now, the earth would have flourished. But if an animal or an insect or the water is contaminated, all of us are affected. So the factor here is human intelligence, human kindness, human capacity to ensure all of this is taken care of. We are responsible. So just keep that in mind. We are responsible. I'm not really going to talk about doctrine of discovery because this is a history course. But if those of you who have heard of it, they're also called the Papal Bull. This stems from the church, from Spain. And it actually says, it actually outlaws who we were at their time, from their perspective, not ours. It says if they're not Christian, if they don't speak our language, if they don't pray to our God, then they're heathens, then they're savages. We can overtake their land and we can overtake them. That's what the doctrine of discovery says in a sentence. And that is not true. So a lot of the laws are written to have this as their foundation. And so empowering our people, educating you, and having you be a part of your culture, your immune system, so that you can help make decisions to create that change, right? Everyone needs to work together. There's been a few, and it's amazing to see, but the more we connect with our community and our members, and yes, I had the chance to attain 3 degrees. And you know what? It was with a lot of grit. I was naive, but my parents, especially my mom, would say, you go get your education. That is your key to self-sufficiency. You won't ever have to go on welfare. And when you have children, you can always provide. And you know what? That's exactly what I'm doing. And I might have had sleepless nights. I might have not eaten, the best I could have. But when you have something in your mind that you want to achieve, and you say, I can do this, I can do this. Learning Western thought and theory is actually easy. It's easy. It's how you apply it when you come back to community. That's the challenge, because then we have to create innovative programs. We have to apply for external funding to then come and say, I want to help teach you in community. Not everyone can go to Lethbridge or Calgary or even the new Red Crow College building. How can we engage people just to plant a few seeds here and there and empower people? Well, this is one of the hopes of this event, is to help educate, help create awareness. Some of the other policies were the Royal Proclamation of 1763, and this is like social studies, right? If anyone, remembers junior high, high school social studies or a history course, or even in sociology, we talk a little bit about the history of these elements when we talk about Indigenous people. But one of the elements that had come up was the Indian Act. So the Indian Act of 1876, and remember, this is a historical context of violence against Indigenous women and girls. That's why I need you to know that history. Then you can make decisions knowing that history. Because if we don't know our history and where we come from, and what kind of laid this foundation of our knowledge system. Now, how can we create change and say, I didn't know that, right? That's part of understanding the past, where we are today, and what's my responsibility as I move forward. These are questions that I often ask myself and those that I work with in the work that we do. So the Indian Act was initially designed for Indians living east of Lake Superior. Western Indians were excluded until such time as the Superintendent General of Indian Affairs considered them advanced enough in civilization, right? It affected traditional Indian sexual, marital, and divorce mores. So again, if we look at this, and our purpose today is to educate gender equality or gender inequality, the norms and beliefs that we have been taught in school, in residential school, off-reserve schooling, those all stem from Western thought and stem from the Indian Act. The Indian Act is one of those things where it affects everything that we do in our everyday reality. And now that we know that, what are we going to do? How are we going to create change? It's paternalistic, meaning it's male dominant, right? It takes out who we are as Siksikaitsitapi. It took that out. It took out the connection to Creator. At one time, it outlawed our akokats and some of our other ceremonies. And in the end, it's been quite violent towards women and girls. So now that we know that, what are you going to do? What is your responsibility? And now, when I learned that, what is my responsibility then? I have 3 daughters and 1 son. My responsibility is to make sure that they know the good ways, so that my daughters are safe wherever they go, and that my son knows he was raised by a woman and immersed with his grandparents and his extended kin to not treat women badly and to foster our men and our boys. That's our responsibility. So it's not just about learning about the violence against women and girls. It's about empowering men and boys to take care of our women and our girls. It's twofold here. It's not just about one. It's about both. And when we immerse that into our culture, and we ensure that we have ceremony and we have the teachings of our ancient ways, then we feel more empowered to make those good decisions in a good way. The outcomes are so positive. So many of the limitations of the Indian Act, right? I think I recall my dad saying there was a time where when he had to leave the reserve, you had to get a permit, and then to get back on the reserve, you needed a permit. Well, really, just think of that. Think of the inconvenience of that. Think of the control. Think of the dominance. Who has the time to stop at an Indian agent and say, well, I got to go to Lethbridge, can you give me a approval? Like that limitation, what did it do to those individuals that lived in that time? And what can we do today so that we understand that context, that way of thinking at that time, right? Women lost status if they married non-status men. Really? Again, I know it has changed. It doesn't happen anymore. Or it does, actually. It does. Because if you're half status, half non, and then that individual has a children, half status, half non, and then it gets into like 16th and 32nd and on and on and on. But what does that do to our everyday reality and thinking women lose status? That's outlandish, but that's what had occurred. And so the mindset of women and of men, think of that at that time. And there are many women who deserve to get their status back, but they don't want to take the time to start applying to say, I'm from this nation, because the government makes things so difficult. They can take things away so easy, but when they know they're in the wrong, it's such a process to get back your right to be who you are. And that's one of our challenges, again, empowering people, creating change. Isn't easy, but we can do it. Oh, and we're stewards of the government. You know, when you call Indian Affairs or FNIB, they'll say, what's your treaty number? They don't care about your name. They just say, what's your treaty number, right? We're a number. How about the next time, you know, you hear that, you say your Blackfoot name. You know, I'm Abby Kwikmataki. What? Yeah, that's who I am. Who are you? I'm not just a number. I'm a human. I'm important. My care is important. How you talk to me is important. The next time you call for your driver's license to renew it, they're going to say, what's your driver's license? They won't say, what's your name? Right? Again, we're a number to so many different departments of government. We've taken the humanness out of that connection. And I'm not just a number. I'm very important. And I tell my children, you matter. Am I running out of time? Residential schools. This is probably the most often spoken about era that we will ever hear of. And I won't go into so many details because in so much of what we do, we continue to address it. Those effects lasted over 150 years. You know, how many thousands of children? There's not quite this definite number, but, you know, a lot. And then those children married and had children and grandchildren and so on and so forth. So that's that intergenerational trauma. But before that, before contact here, we had intergenerational transfer of knowledge. We already had a good way of life. So we can't forget that. We can't forget we already had these relationships. So when we talk about healing from trauma, what we want to do is take the mask away from this intergenerational trauma per se. And we want to get to the core of who we are when we take all these trauma masks off. And we already had so much intergenerational positivity. We already had that. We were already intact. What colonization did was mask it. We have several layers of masks. And what we're doing today, we're unmasking a few. Until you are so strong that our clients don't need to come to this program, that they're organizing a program, that they're working, that they're empowering themselves and their families. That's that intergenerational healing and connection, because we were already whole before all of this chaos. And it actually was chaos. Colonization, they create chaos in humans so that those in government can control. They assimilate, and they talk about, well, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. They put controls on your behavior, right? And it doesn't match our Siksikaitsitapi identity. It doesn't match us. That's why many of us don't get along with authority, right? We can't get it. Our spirit doesn't get it. There's a documentary out. It's titled "Our Spirits Don't Know English." So if you have a chance to watch that, many of the individuals that talk about their experience at residential school, it was the Carlisle Indian Residential School and other survivors from other schools. They said, many of them say, well, I spoke my language before I went to school. And I would get, whipped and beaten. Well, just fathom that at that time and how far we've come. But we must honor and bless those who experienced that firsthand. Talk about it. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't these children's fault. It wasn't their fault. They ought not to carry the guilt and shame of the oppressor. We have to acknowledge that. That's so important for us to acknowledge. It's not ours. And that's part of unmasking the trauma. Right? So many things occurred. Children were separated from their parents. Not only that, parents and grandparents were separated from their children. How did parents operate at home when there was no children? There was no children to talk Blackfoot to tell stories to cook for, to teach. It was mandatory at one time that every child must go to a residential school. An Indian agent would show up and an RCMP would show up. So we must talk about it so that we can move forward and heal that, right? We must do these things in order for us to heal. One of the elements was in moving forward, if we can say we move forward, was talking about the apology. In 2008, June 11th, I watched it and I cried. I just cried. It wasn't an applause or anything. I just cried. I was home. My kids were at school. I called my mom and dad. They were home. For many, and in my research, many said, I didn't even watch it. It's too late. He just read it from a piece of paper. It didn't mean anything. But it's documented. It's there. So we must make government accountable. Now what are we going to do? You apologized. So how are you going to make it better for us? And they're still trying to figure it out. They're still trying to figure out how are we going to make it better for them. We don't know how to. This, I don't know if you can see this diagram, but when I first started, I spoke about we already had strength. We already had connection. We were grounded in our ceremonies, and we spoke our language. Our culture is our immune system. Our culture is everything about who we are as Blackfoot people. So we're already strong. So over time, we had this doctrine of discovery. We had the Indian Act. We had residential schools. Now we're learning. Now we're very intelligent. We're an intelligent and strong nation. We're saying, no, you can't kill us unless we kill ourselves. And we're not going to do that because our culture is vibrant. It's good. And we value it. What are we going to do? So we're going to take our healing back. Yeah, we're going to take that trauma and we're going to say, I'm going to heal in this ceremony. And I'm going to go talk to this elder. And I'm going to connect with with people from my nation. And I'm going to go to a sweat. And I'm going to go to a grandmother's talking circle. And we're going to immerse our members in our culture so that we build up our immune system again. And you just wait and see what happens. And we've witnessed it from so many things with Blood Tribe Department of Health. So many things on the Blood Tribe. We really are a strong nation. That's why our territory was so big. People were fearful. Blackfoot warriors are fearless. And warriors, including women and girls, not just men. That's a misconception. If we talk about contemporary warriors, we have so many that are courageous and fearless, and they'll say, tell me what to do and I'll get it done. Like, that's how strong we are and who we are. And that's how intelligent we are. We come from strength, connection, and ceremony. A few more slides, and then I'm done. So in 2019, they released this big volume, over 1,000 pages, Reclaiming Power and Peace, right? The National Inquiry into Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. And I always include men, boys, and what Western term and English terms LGBTQ2SI community. So that's gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, two-spirit, queer, intersex, all of those. But you know what? We're all human. Why does it even matter if we put a label on someone? It matters that we honor and respect each other. That's what our ceremonies taught us. That's what our ceremonies taught us. And that's what we want to bring back to our programs and to our members. And I include myself in that because I don't know everything. I just know a little bit because I went to school. But what am I going to do with that? I'm going to bring it back home, immerse myself in the culture, in the elders' knowledge with other amazing people, and we're going to share what we know in an organized gathering such as this. So when I was in my PhD program, it's odd. It's odd. And this is what I found from my experience. In many of my graduate courses, I was the only First Nations student. I was a woman, and I was actually doing my PhD while many others were doing a master's degree. So I was the odd person out. And maybe it's just how I roll in my life. I go against the grain. I had 3 kids before I started university. Talk about, taking up challenges. Like, there's been nothing easy on my journey. But because I already knew ceremony and I was already connected to grandparents and I knew that already, those were my protective factors to do what I did. And I know that now because of the choices I made. And isn't that amazing? That's evidence to say that our ancient ways work and our connection to our community works. So I was writing a paper and researching so many different elements and how do I get this point across? Because I can't write in a white person's way. And I have to help professors learn who I am and how I write. And so sometimes I'll pick quotes from different, authors. And so I really love this one. It says, "Stand on the back of the turtle, our mother, and look at the land and wonder what it had been like if Columbus would have been successful in his pursuit of India and avoided the eastern shore of this continent. Wipe your Indian hands in your Levi jeans, get into your Toyota or Ford truck, and 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 throw in a tape of Mozart, Led Zeppelin, or Blackfoot ceremonial songs. Then throw back your head and laugh. You are a survivor of a colonized people. Like, what does that tell you? There isn't anything we haven't been through. There isn't anything we can't do because we have our culture, we have each other, and we know our ancient ways work. We are still here, and we're going to move forward. So, with that last quote, I just wanted to give that all back to you and say, Misamabata Bisin, Gamodan, and all my references. May Creator guide you on your sacred path. Thank you so much for listening.